Evan Cole spent most of his days in quiet places where no one else bothered to look. He liked the sound of the wind moving through the grass more than the noise of people. His ranch sat far from town, spread wide across dry land, with tall hills rising behind it like silent guards. He lived alone in a small house made of old wood, and every morning he woke before sunrise, fed his horse, checked his fences, and worked until the day ended. People in town often said he was a man who carried more weight on his shoulders than he would ever admit. Evan didn't argue. He simply kept working. One late afternoon, Evan was riding home after trading supplies in town. The sky was turning a soft orange, and long shadows stretched across the ground. He took the path near the creek because the water was clearer there and his horse liked to stop for a drink. As he reached the narrow bend, something felt wrong. The birds were not singing. The bushes were pushed down in strange ways. His horse snorted and pulled back a little, sensing trouble. Evan climbed down and looked carefully at the ground. He saw footprints clearly, more than one person. Shoes and bare feet mixed. The dirt was disturbed, and broken branches pointed in the direction of the deeper woods. He crouched down and noticed something else. Drops of blood. Not old, not dry. Fresh. He followed the trail slowly, his hand near the handle of the knife on his belt. He didn't like fighting, but he also knew danger when he saw it. The path led him through thick plants and sharp rocks until he reached a quiet, open place near the creek. That was where he saw her. A woman lay on the ground, her body half covered by fallen branches. She wasn't moving much. Only a small rise and fall of her chest showed she was alive. She wore Apache clothing, though torn badly, and her dark hair was tangled with pieces of dry grass. Her face looked pale, and her breathing was weak. A cut on her leg was bleeding slowly, staining the dirt beneath her. Evan moved closer and knelt beside her. When he touched her arm gently, her eyes opened just a little. She didn't speak, but he saw fear in her eyes. Mixed with exhaustion, she tried to push herself up, but she had no strength left. Evan could see she was close to losing consciousness again. He looked around quickly to make sure no one was near. Whoever had hurt her might still be close. He could not leave her there, not with the cold night coming. He lifted her carefully, surprised by how light she felt. She winced in pain but didn't fight him. He carried her to his horse and placed her gently across the saddle so she wouldn't strain her wounded leg. Then he climbed up behind her and headed straight to his ranch. The ride back felt longer than usual. Evan kept one arm around her so she wouldn't fall. She was half awake, whispering words he couldn't understand. Once, she tried to look behind them, as if expecting someone to follow. Evan gave a small shake of his head and said in a calm voice, "You're safe for now. No one is coming." She didn't answer, but her breathing eased a little. When they reached the ranch, Evan carried her inside and set her on his bed. His house wasn't large, but it was warm and quiet. He lit a lamp and took out his first aid box, something he rarely used. The wound on her leg was deep but not beyond saving. He cleaned it gently, put herbs on it to stop the infection, and wrapped it with clean cloth. She rested with her eyes closed, breathing slowly, almost like she was already halfway to sleep. Evan heated water and gave her a little to drink. She sipped weakly and looked at him with uncertainty. He spoke softly. "You're safe here. Just rest." She nodded faintly, too tired to speak more. Soon she fell asleep. Evan stayed awake for a long time, sitting by the edge of the room, watching the fire in the small stove. He wondered who she was, what had happened to her, and if trouble would come looking for her. But looking at her resting quietly, he knew he had made the right decision. Leaving her in the woods would have meant losing her life. The next morning, sunlight touched the windows and spread across the wooden floor. Evan checked the woman's bandage and found the wound bleeding less. She opened her eyes and looked around the small room with confusion. When she saw him, she pulled the blanket close. Unsure of him, Evan raised his hand slightly and said, "I'm Evan. I brought you here because you were hurt." She stared at him for a moment, before whispering her name. "Naya." Her voice was soft but strong under the weakness. Evan nodded gently. You're safe, Naya. No one will hurt you here. She looked away, unsure if she believed him yet. For the next few hours, she lay quietly, watching him move around the room, preparing food and boiling water. He brought her some broth, and though she hesitated, she finally ate a little. She watched him closely, studying him. He seemed like a man who didn't talk more than necessary. A man who lived far from trouble, but also a man who stepped forward when someone needed help. Days passed slowly. Naya healed, little by little. She still couldn't walk easily, but she could sit up and talk more. Evan gave her space, letting her rest while he worked outside. She listened to the sound of his boots on the ground, the calls of the animals, and the long silence between tasks. She noticed he returned often to check on her, leaving water, making sure she was warm, adjusting the curtains so the sun didn't bother her eyes. One afternoon, when she felt stronger, Naya asked in a quiet voice, "Why did you help me?" Evan paused, unsure how to answer. He rubbed the back of his neck and said simply, "Because you needed help. I couldn't leave you there." Naya studied his face. She saw honesty there, mixed with a hint of sadness he didn't speak about. She asked him nothing more. She didn't want to push him, and he didn't want to push her. But a small bond formed in those unspoken moments. Later that evening, the sky turned purple, and the air grew colder. Evan was sharpening tools outside when Naya watched him from the window. His movements were steady and quiet. He seemed like a man who carried pain but hid it carefully. She wondered how long he had lived alone like this. When he came inside to check her wound again, she said in a low voice, "You saved my life." Her words were sincere, filled with gratitude he could feel even without looking at her. Evan breathed out slowly and nodded once. Anyone would have. Evan, but she shook her head gently. No. Not everyone would stop. Not everyone would follow a trail that didn't belong to them. Not everyone would bring a stranger home. Her words made him pause. He wasn't used to being seen that clearly. He quietly wrapped her leg and stepped back, unsure how to respond. Naya watched him with soft eyes, seeing something in him he didn't see in himself. She saw kindness, but also loneliness. A man who worked hard yet never asked for anything. A man who didn't know how much weight he carried every day. Evan didn't know that Naya was thinking that. But she already understood something important about him. And as she sat beside the warm fire, she whispered something very faint. Something he didn't hear. "You saved me. And I think you saved yourself too." And in that quiet room, with the night settling outside, a new beginning formed. Gentle and unexpected. Between a cowboy who lived alone and an Apache woman who had almost lost everything. The days after Naya's rescue moved slowly, but something in the ranch changed. Before, Evan's home felt empty even when the fire was burning. Now, there was a quiet presence inside, soft movements, gentle breathing, and the feeling that someone else shared the same roof. Naya was still healing, but she tried not to disturb anything. She respected the space, the tools, and the man who had saved her life. Evan continued his daily routine, feeding the animals and fixing things around the ranch, but his eyes drifted often toward the cabin where Naya rested. He wasn't used to someone being inside his home. He wasn't used to worrying if someone was warm, had enough water, or had eaten properly. Before she came, his days were simple and silent. Now he checked the water pitcher 3 times and made sure the room stayed warm enough. It was unusual for him. Yet he didn't mind. Naya began sitting up more, and even standing with support. She watched him through the window as he carried hay bales, repaired a broken fence, and talked softly to his horse as he brushed it. She learned something in those moments. Evan was a calm man, but not an idle one. He used every hour well. She respected that. One morning, when Evan came inside after checking the fence line, he found Naya carefully sweeping the floor with small movements, leaning on one leg to avoid hurting the injured one. She stopped immediately when she saw him. "You don't need to do that," Evan said, stepping forward. His voice wasn't sharp, only concerned. You're still recovering. Naya lowered her gaze but stood straight. I feel better. I want to help. Evan rubbed the back of his neck, unsure how to respond. He didn't want her to strain herself, but he also didn't want to take away the little pieces of dignity she was trying to regain. He gave a small nod. All right. But don't push yourself. She smiled softly, a small, simple smile. And he felt something warm inside his chest, a feeling he hadn't felt in years. Later that day, when he brought her warm broth, she insisted on eating at the small wooden table instead of the bed. Evan pulled out the chair and helped her sit. She ate slowly. And he sat across from her, fixing a lantern wick while keeping an eye on her. You live very far from people, Naya said quietly. I like it that way, he replied. You don't get lonely? Evan paused, his fingers stopping on the lantern. He didn't often talk about personal things. Sometimes, he admitted softly. But I got used to it. Naya looked around the small house. It's a peaceful place, but peaceful places can also feel empty. Evan didn't look up, but her words reached him. No one had said things like that to him before, not in a way that felt like understanding. In the following days, Naya became stronger. She walked slowly around the yard, leaning on a wooden stick Evan made for her. She examined the land, touching the leaves of plants, watching the sky, and listening to the sounds of the animals. One afternoon, she surprised Evan by cooking a simple meal using the few ingredients he had. When he came inside smelling the food, he paused. You cooked this? He asked. She nodded. I wanted to do something in return. Evan tasted the food carefully. It was delicious. Far better than the meals he used to make for himself. This is good, he said honestly. Better than mine. Naya laughed softly. It was the first time Evan heard her laugh, and something about that soft sound stayed with him. They fell into a slow rhythm. Evan worked outside, and Naya helped inside the house. Sometimes they talked while he fixed a tool, or while she cut vegetables. Other times they said nothing at all, but the silence felt warm, not heavy. Naya watched how he moved with care, and how he handled animals with patience. Evan noticed how she worked quietly, never complaining, doing everything with a calm grace. One evening, while the sun set behind the hills, Naya sat outside near the barn, enjoying the soft breeze. Evan joined her after finishing his chores. They watched the sky turn orange and pink. You work too hard for one man, Naya said softly. It's a ranch, Evan replied. There's always something to fix. That is true, she said with a small smile. But even a strong man can tire. Evan glanced at her, a little surprised by her gentle observation. And what about you? You don't get tired helping around when you're still recovering? She looked down at her injured leg. It helps me feel alive. It helps me forget what happened. Evan respected that. He didn't ask questions about her past. He figured she would tell him when she felt ready. The days blended into a steady pattern. Naya grew comfortable with the ranch, and Evan grew comfortable with her presence. One morning, she helped him feed the animals. Her movements were slower than his, but she worked with care. When she reached the horses, one of them stepped back nervously, but Naya raised her hand calmly and whispered something soft. The horse stopped, leaning its head toward her. Evan watched quietly from the side. You're good with animals, he said. My people teach us from young age, she replied. Animals understand calm hearts. Evan nodded. They trust you fast. Maybe they feel safe here, she said, looking briefly at him. He didn't answer. Instead, he lifted a bucket and returned to his chores. But her words lingered with him for the rest of the day. As time passed, Naya felt strong enough to walk without the stick for short distances. Evan always stayed close, just in case, though he pretended he wasn't watching. She noticed, of course, but she didn't say anything. She simply appreciated it. One afternoon, as they ate together, Naya asked something unexpected. Evan, why do you live alone? Where is your family? Evan grew quiet. He didn't look upset, just thoughtful. My parents passed a long time ago. I didn't have brothers or sisters. After that, I stayed on the ranch. It was their land. And I didn't want to leave it. And no one stayed with you? He shook his head. Life took people in different directions. Some got married. Some moved to the city. I stayed. Some got married. 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 Naya looked at him with understanding in her eyes. You carry too much alone, she said. Her tone wasn't judging, only caring. Evan looked away, a little embarrassed. I manage. I know you do, she replied softly. But even a strong man can feel alone. Their eyes met briefly, and Evan felt a strange warmth in his chest. No one had spoken to him like that in years. Maybe ever. As the sun dipped behind the hills, Naya stood slowly and stepped outside. Evan followed her. She looked at the wide open land, golden grass stretching far into the distance. You live in a beautiful place, she said. But beauty can feel heavy when there is no one to share it with. Evan remained quiet, not sure how to respond. Naya turned to him, her voice low but clear. You live like a man carrying a silent mountain on his back. Evan blinked. A silent mountain? Yes, she said gently. A weight you don't talk about. A weight that grows because no one helps you carry it. Evan didn't know what to say. He had lived many years thinking his silence was normal, thinking his loneliness was just part of life. Hearing someone describe it so clearly made him feel seen in a way he wasn't prepared for. Naya stepped closer. Not too close, but close enough for her words to carry warmth. No man should live this alone. Evan swallowed slowly. He wasn't sure why her words touched him so deeply, but they did. For the first time, he felt that someone understood him without him having to explain anything. The wind blew gently between them, carrying dust and the soft smell of grass. The sky was turning dark, and the first stars appeared. Evan finally found his voice and said softly, Maybe I didn't know I was alone, until you said it. Naya gave a small, knowing smile. Sometimes it takes another heart to show us our own. And as the night settled on the ranch, the space between them felt smaller than ever. Something warm, gentle, and unspoken grew in the silence. Something that promised their lives were slowly changing in ways neither of them fully understood yet. The ranch looked different now, though nothing had truly changed. The fences were still old. The barn still leaned a little to one side, and the land still stretched endlessly in every direction. Yet the place felt warm in a new way. Naya was walking better each day, and Evan found himself watching her without even meaning to. Something about her movements, calm, careful, steady, made the ranch feel less empty. Every morning, Evan stepped outside to begin his chores. Before, he used to face the rising sun alone, but now he always saw Naya stepping out slowly, leaning on the stick only when she needed it. She didn't rush. She walked with a steady rhythm, taking in the land with careful eyes. She seemed to understand the land in a way he didn't. One morning, she approached him as he saddled his horse. She said she wanted to help with the cattle. Evan hesitated. Are you sure? Your leg is still healing. Naya rested a hand on the horse's neck. I can do small things. I want to help. He didn't want her to get hurt, but he could see the determination in her eyes. In the end, he nodded. Stay close to me then. She did. As they walked across the field, she pointed out small signs Evan had never noticed. Tracks of a coyote near the fence, the way the grass bent in a direction that showed the cattle had wandered farther than usual, and a pattern of broken stems that hinted at a bad storm a few nights earlier. Evan listened carefully, surprised at how naturally she read the land. You see things fast, he said. My people learn early, she replied. The land speaks if you listen. Evan didn't say it, but he admired that. It felt like she brought a new kind of wisdom to the place. Something steady and natural. Later in the day, she helped him carry small buckets of feed. While she worked, she hummed a soft tune one Evan had never heard before. It had no real words, just a calm melody that made the air feel lighter. When she placed the feed in the trough, one of the young cattle approached her cautiously. She lowered her hand and stayed still. The animal sniffed her hand and then walked closer, brushing its head against her arm. Evan watched from a few steps away. Animals trust you easily. She smiled faintly. Maybe they feel my heart. Evan looked away quickly, not sure how to respond to that simple but deep answer. As the days passed, their quiet bond deepened. They shared small moments that didn't seem big on their own, but together they created something warm. Sometimes Evan showed her how to mend a broken tool. Sometimes she taught him how to prepare herbs for small wounds. They often sat near the fire in the evenings, not always talking, but always comfortable. One afternoon, Naya was helping him with the horses when she suddenly froze. Her eyes narrowed, and she turned toward the distant hills. "What is it?" Evan asked. She didn't speak at first. She stepped toward the barn door and peered at the horizon. "Someone was here recently," she said quietly. Evan's expression tightened. "How do you know?" She pointed at the ground outside. The dirt was disturbed, and there was a faint print of a boot. Evan hadn't noticed it. He had walked past it several times. Naya's voice dropped lower. "These are not your steps. And they are fresh." Evan followed her gaze toward the trail leading into the hills. A cold feeling moved through him. He wondered if the men who had hurt her before were still searching. He looked at her. She seemed calm, but he could see a flicker of fear in her eyes. Without hesitation, he said, "You're safe here. No one will touch you." She met his gaze and gave a small nod, but the worry didn't leave her completely. That evening, as the sun dropped behind the hills, Naya stayed close to the cabin. Evan sat outside, sharpening his knife, thinking about the boot print. He wasn't someone who feared trouble, but he didn't want danger near the ranch, not with Naya still healing. Naya stepped out and sat near him. The firelight reflected softly on her face. "They may come again," she said quietly. Evan didn't stop sharpening the blade, but his jaw tightened. "Let them. They will not get near you." Naya studied him silently. The wind blew gently, carrying the cool smell of night. "Why do you stand for me so strongly?" she asked softly. Evan paused. The knife in his hand stilled. He wasn't used to explaining his feelings, but the truth rose inside him. "Because someone should," he said simply. She looked at him for a long moment, and something in her expression softened, something warm, something grateful. The next day, they continued their work. Evan taught her how to check the fences safely, and she taught him how to read the clouds for rain. They worked side by side, and the silence between them felt full of meaning. Later, as they walked back toward the cabin, Naya stopped suddenly. "Evan," she said quietly, "if those men return, they are not coming for land or cattle. They are coming for me." Evan turned to her fully. "Then they'll have to get through me first." She breathed out slowly, almost shakily. "You don't owe me anything. You didn't even know me." Evan shook his head. "You were hurt. You needed someone. That's enough." Naya looked at him with a deep emotion she couldn't hide. For a moment, she didn't speak. Then she said softly, "No one has ever protected me the way you do. No one." Evan didn't know what to say. He wasn't used to praise. He wasn't used to someone looking at him like he was more than a quiet rancher. That night, as they sat near the fire, Naya seemed thoughtful. Evan finally asked, "What's on your mind?" She lifted her eyes to him. "You have given me safety, kindness, and a place to breathe. I don't know how to repay that." "You don't need to repay anything," Evan said. Naya shook her head lightly. "In my life, nothing is free. Every kindness has a cost." "Not with me," Evan said gently. "You don't have to earn your place here." Naya held his gaze. "But I want to. I want to stand with you. Not as someone you rescued, but as someone who chooses to be here." Evan felt a warm pressure in his chest, unexpected but steady. He didn't answer right away because he didn't want to say something foolish. Instead, he looked at the fire and spoke slowly. "I don't mind you staying here. In fact, the ranch feels better with you in it." And at Naya's breath caught quietly at his words. She didn't say anything, but her eyes softened with something deep, and warm. The next afternoon, something happened that tested everything between them. They were inside the barn fixing saddle straps when they heard horses approaching. Naya stiffened immediately. Evan stepped forward, shielding her with his body without even thinking. Voices carried across the yard, 3 men, loud and rough. Naya recognized the voices instantly. Her heart pounded. But Evan stood solid, unmoving, like a wall between her and danger. The men approached and shouted Evan's name, pretending to be friendly. Evan stepped outside the barn, keeping Naya hidden behind him. He faced the men with calm strength. "What do you want?" Evan asked. One man smirked. "Heard you were keeping company out here. Thought we'd come see who you've got." Evan didn't move. "There's no one here for you." The men looked around, but Evan's firm stance kept them back. After a long moment, the men turned away, leaving with annoyed expressions. They weren't finished, but they didn't dare push Evan further that day. When they left, Naya stepped out slowly. She looked shaken but safe. "You stood in front of them," she whispered. "I'll do it again," Evan replied. Naya looked at him with emotion rising in her eyes. "Why?" Evan held her gaze, steady and sure. "Because I won't let anyone harm you." For a long time, she said nothing. Then she stepped closer, her voice trembling with gratitude. "No one has ever defended me like that." Evan breathed deeply, feeling something powerful shift between them, a trust, a bond, a connection that could not be broken. And as the evening settled, their hearts moved a little closer, carrying a quiet promise that neither of them dared to speak aloud yet. But both of them felt clearly. The days after the men came to the ranch felt heavier, though Evan and Naya seldom spoke about it. The quiet around the ranch was still peaceful, but beneath that peace lay a new awareness. Naya checked the windows more often. Evan walked the property line before sunrise and after sunset. Neither of them said they were worried, but both felt it. Yet even with that unease, something gentle continued to grow between them. Something they couldn't stop, even if they tried. Evan had always lived with silence, but now the silence felt different. It was warmer. Naya's presence filled the space with a calm strength. She moved through the ranch as if she had been there for years, though she still walked carefully on her healing leg. She helped with the animals, cooked simple meals, and brought a sense of balance to Evan's world. One evening, when the air was cool and soft, Naya was sitting outside, watching the sky. The stars were bright, scattered like small fires across the dark sky. Evan walked out of the barn, wiping dust from his hands, and saw her sitting alone, her face lit by the gentle glow of moonlight. He walked toward her and took the empty seat next to her. "You're quiet tonight," Evan said, settling his elbows on his knees. Naya didn't answer at first. Her eyes were fixed on the land stretching out before them. "I'm thinking," she said finally. "What about?" She looked down at her hands, then back at the sky. "About the day you found me. About everything that came after." Evan shifted slightly. "I'm glad I found you," he said softly. Naya smiled a little. "I know you are. And I'm glad too." The wind passed gently between them, carrying the scent of dry grass. Naya continued speaking in a calm voice. "You protected me that day in the barn. You stood in front of me without fear. I've never had someone do that." Evan looked at her, his expression gentle but serious. "You didn't deserve what happened to you. I wasn't going to let them come near you." Naya turned toward him fully now. Her voice softened. "But you did it without asking for anything. That means more than you know." Evan wasn't good with big words or long speeches, so he simply gave a small nod. It was the right thing to do. Naya watched him closely, searching his face. She could see honesty in him, a pure kind of care he didn't even realize he carried. Her voice became even quieter. "You treat me like someone who matters, Evan." "You do matter," he answered without thinking. His voice came out deeper, rougher with truth. She inhaled slowly, trying to calm the rush of emotion inside her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The night wrapped around them, gentle and still. Later, As the sky darkened fully, Evan added wood to the small fire. Naya sat a little closer than before. Their shoulders almost touched. Neither moved away. Both felt the closeness, and both accepted it. As the flames flickered, Naya spoke again, her tone thoughtful. Evan, I don't want you to think I'm weak. I don't want to be a burden on your life. Evan blinked, surprised. A burden? You're not. I'm staying here because I needed safety. I needed healing, she said. But sometimes, I feel like I'm taking too much of your time. Evan shook his head firmly. You're not taking anything. You're giving more than you know. Naya tilted her head. What am I giving? Company, he said quietly. Someone to talk to. Someone who makes this place feel less empty. Naya's eyes softened with warmth. She had hoped he felt something like that, but hearing it felt different. It felt real. After a long silence, Naya turned toward him fully and asked, Do you know what you gave me, Evan? No, he replied truthfully. What did I give you? She took a slow breath and answered, A place where my heart can rest. Evan felt his chest tighten at her words. No one had ever spoken to him like that before. He didn't know how to reply, but he didn't need to. His silence meant he was listening. Naya lifted her hand slightly, hesitated, then rested it gently on his arm. The touch was light, barely there, but it sent a warm wave through him. Evan didn't pull away. Instead, he looked down at her hand, then up at her eyes. She held his gaze with surprising firmness. That was when she said it. You need a woman like me. Evan froze for a moment. Not because he was shocked, but because he understood the weight of what she was saying. She wasn't being bold or proud. She wasn't claiming anything. She was offering something gently. Something honest. Naya continued, her voice soft but full of meaning. You need someone who sees how hard you work. Someone who stands with you. Someone who understands quiet hearts. She swallowed lightly, then added, Someone who knows how to care for a man who doesn't ask for anything. Evan didn't speak. He felt her words settle inside him, steady and true. He had spent years moving through life like a shadow, doing what needed to be done without expecting anything in return. Hearing her say these things felt like receiving a map to a place he didn't know existed. Naya wasn't finished. You saved my life. But more than that, you gave me peace. And now I want to give you something too. Someone who stays. Evan's hands tightened slightly. Not in fear, but in emotion he didn't know how to express. He finally found his voice. Naya. I don't know what to say. She smiled softly. You don't have to say anything now. But I want you to know. I choose this place. I choose to stand with you. Evan looked at her as if seeing her for the first time. He had known she was strong, wise, and gentle. But now he saw something more. Someone willing to build a new life beside him. The fire crackled softly as they sat together, letting the truth of her words fill the space between them. Neither felt the need to speak. Their closeness said enough. Later, when they walked back to the cabin, Evan walked just a little closer to her than usual. His arm brushed hers lightly, and she didn't move away. Inside the cabin, he helped her sit, and she placed her hand over his for a moment. You don't have to be alone anymore, she whispered. Evan swallowed, feeling a warmth rise in his chest that he hadn't felt in so long he barely recognized it. Maybe I don't, he said softly. As he stepped outside to put out the lanterns, he glanced back at the cabin. Naya sat inside near the fire, calm and steady, as if she had always belonged there. It struck him then her presence filled the ranch in a way he hadn't thought possible, and as the stars glowed above the quiet land, Evan understood something important. Naya wasn't just someone he saved, she was someone who was changing the shape of his life, piece by piece, moment by moment. With her strength, her kindness, and her quiet words, her confession had opened a door inside him, one he didn't realize he had been afraid to open, and now, neither of them could ignore what was slowly growing between them. The next morning came quietly, with a soft golden light spreading across the ranch. Evan stepped outside early as he always did, but something in him felt different. The world didn't feel as heavy as it once had. The tired silence he used to carry around no longer sat so deeply in his chest. Naya's words from the night before stayed with him, echoing gently in his mind. "You need a woman like me." He had replayed those words over and over while lying awake. Not because he was unsure of them, but because they felt true in a way nothing had in years. He didn't know if he deserved such words, but he felt the truth in them just the same. As he fed the horses, he kept glancing back at the cabin. When he saw Naya step outside, moving slowly, but with more strength than before, something settled inside him, an understanding he had been avoiding for too long. She walked toward him with steady steps, her dark hair lifted by the morning breeze. Evan watched her carefully, trying not to stare too obviously, but failing a little. She reached him and offered a small smile. "Good morning," she said gently. "Morning," he replied, clearing his throat for no real reason. Naya took the brush from his hand and began brushing the horse's neck alongside him. Her movements were gentle but sure, and she hummed a soft tune that mixed with the early wind. Evan found himself slowing his own movements just to keep her near. After a few moments, Naya spoke again. "There's a calm feeling today," she said. "Different from yesterday." "Who?" Evan gave a small nod. "Feels like the land is resting." She looked at him, her eyes soft. "You look calmer too." He blinked at that. "Do I?" "Yes," she said, her voice warm. "Something in your face changed." Evan didn't know how to respond, so he simply kept brushing the horse, pretending he didn't feel the warmth rising in his chest. Naya stepped closer to him, close enough that he felt the presence of her beside him, steady, warm, and real. But the peace of the morning didn't last long. As they finished their chores, dust rose from the far edge of the land. A group of riders approached, moving fast. Evan narrowed his eyes. He knew who they were before he even saw their faces clearly. Naya noticed the tension in his shoulders. "It's them," she whispered. Evan stepped in front of her without thinking. "Stay behind me." But Naya shook her head. "No, Evan. I will not hide again." He turned to look at her. There was strength in her eyes, strength he had seen many times before, but never like this. She wasn't afraid, even knowing who approached. Evan wanted to argue, but he respected her too much to tell her where she belonged. When the riders reached the yard, they slowed. They didn't come with loud voices or threats this time. They looked uncertain, almost nervous, because they knew Evan was not a man who bent easily. The lead man cleared his throat. "We're looking for someone," he said, avoiding Evan's eyes. Evan didn't move from his place. "No one here for you." Naya stepped forward before Evan could stop her. Her voice was steady. "You are not welcome here." The men exchanged uneasy glances. Something about Naya standing tall beside Evan, without fear, without trembling, seemed to take the strength out of them. They were expecting a frightened woman hiding behind a cowboy, not a woman who stood beside him with pride. "We didn't come for trouble," the man said uncertainly. "Then leave," Evan replied, his voice calm but firm. "There's no place for you on this land." The man hesitated for a long moment. Then, finally, without another word, they turned their horses and rode away. The dust settled behind them, leaving the ranch quiet once more. Naya released a breath she had been holding. Evan turned to her quickly. "You shouldn't have stepped forward like that," he said softly. "I didn't want you in danger." She met his eyes calmly. "I am not afraid anymore. Not when you stand with me." Evan stared at her, realizing something deep. She wasn't trying to be brave for herself. She was being brave for him because she trusted him, because she believed in him. As the last echo of hoofbeats faded, the ranch seemed to breathe again. Naya placed a hand gently over her heart and then looked at him in a way that made his breath stop for a moment. "It's over," she said quietly. "They won't return." Evan hoped she was right. But more than that, he realized He didn't want to imagine life without her here. They spent the rest of the morning working side by side. Every small task felt different, lighter, almost peaceful. Evan found himself checking on her more often. Not because he feared she was hurt, but because he wanted to see her. She found reasons to stand closer to him, reasons to help him lift things she didn't really need to help with. Their steps kept falling in the same rhythm, and neither tried to change it. Later in the afternoon, when the sun hung high and the land shimmered with soft heat, they sat under the shade of the old tree near the barn. Evan leaned against the trunk, arms resting on his knees. Naya sat a small distance away, pulling her legs close as she looked out over the wide fields. After a long silence, Naya spoke softly. "You gave me a safe place. You gave me peace. But now, I must make a choice." Evan felt his heart tighten. He had known this moment might come, but that didn't prepare him. "A choice?" he asked quietly. She nodded. "My tribe may be looking for me. I could return to them. Or—" She stopped, her voice softening. "I could stay." Evan looked down at his hands. He wanted to tell her everything he felt. He wanted to tell her he didn't want her to leave, that the ranch felt empty before she came, and he feared it would feel twice as empty if she left now. But he didn't want to trap her with his needs, so he kept quiet. Naya watched him carefully. She understood his silence. She understood the emotions he hid behind his steady eyes. She scooted slightly closer to him, close enough for their shoulders to almost touch. "I want to stay," she finally said. "Not because I owe you anything, but because this place feels like home." "You feel like home?" Evan lifted his head slowly. He wasn't sure he heard her correctly. "You want to stay?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. She nodded. "Yes. This land, this quiet, this life, I want to share it with someone who understands it. Someone like you." Evan swallowed hard. His heart felt full in a way he couldn't explain. "Naya, I would be honored if you stayed." Her eyes warmed with emotion. "I choose this place. I choose you, Evan." He breathed out slowly, deeply, letting her words sink into him. It felt like something long locked inside his heart finally opened. She continued softly. "I stand with you, not because you saved me, but because you see me." Evan looked at her for a long moment, then said quietly, "You see me too." The wind moved through the grass as if whispering agreement. Later, as the sun dipped low, they walked back toward the cabin. Naya walked closer than before, so close that her arm brushed his once. Then again. Evan didn't move away. Their steps matched naturally. When they reached the cabin door, Naya turned to him. "We can build something here," she said. "A quiet life. A strong life." Evan nodded. "Together," he added, the word feeling both new and right. "Yes," she said with a gentle smile. "Together." And, that night, as they sat beside the warm fire inside the cabin, Evan felt something he had not felt in years: hope. A steady, honest hope that warmed him from the inside. Naya sat near him, not too close, not too far, but exactly where she wanted to be. She looked at the fire, then at him, and said softly, "This place is no longer empty, because now, we stand as two." Evan felt a deep calm settle over him. "And I'm grateful for that," he replied. Outside, the land stretched wide and quiet under the night sky. But it no longer felt lonely. The ranch had found its missing piece, and two hearts that had once wandered alone now found strength and peace beside each other. The cowboy who saved a life found one beside him, and the woman who needed protection became the person who completed his world. Their story didn't end with danger or fear. It ended with a choice, two people choosing each other, choosing peace, choosing a life built together on quiet land beneath endless skies.